Good afternoon, friends, and thank you very much for being here this afternoon. As you're aware, this would be interaction relating to the Prime Minister's visit to the United States. We have here with us Foreign Secretary, Mrs. Sujata Singh, who will be speaking to you initially. She will have an opening statement, following which she will be willing to answer any questions. These questions, as is usual, we will focus on the visit. At the end of it, if there is still time, she is willing to take a few questions on other issues. But the primary focus, as usual, will be on the briefing, and that is on the Prime Minister's visit to the US. On her right is Mr. Vikram Doraiswamy, who is Joint Secretary, Americas, and he will assist her in case there are any detailed queries that you would like to ask. With those introductory words, I'd like to request Foreign Secretary to make her opening remarks.
Good afternoon. As you're all aware, the Prime Minister is visiting the United States from Thursday, September 26th to Monday, September 30th. The Prime Minister will meet President Obama on September 27th at the White House in Washington, D.C. The meeting will be followed by a press availability and a working lunch. PM will be accompanied by the External Affairs Minister, who will join his delegation in Washington, D.C. On September 27th evening, PM will reach New York. He will address the general debate in the forenoon of September 28th. PM and EAM will use the opportunity afforded by the UN General Assembly session to have bilateral meetings with some of their counterparts. I understand that you have been briefed by Additional Secretary Navtej Sarna about the programs involving PM and EAM in the United Nations in New York. Therefore, I will focus my remarks on the bilateral visit to the United States. This will be PM's third summit meeting with President Obama, following an exchange of state visits, first in Washington, D.C., 2009, second in New Delhi, 2010. The two leaders have also met frequently on the margins of other multilateral events. PM's visit caps a period of heightened exchanges at a high political level. It takes forward a recent momentum in bilateral exchanges of visits, including the visit of Secretary Kerry and Energy Secretary Moniz for the fourth strategic dialogue in June, and Vice President Biden's visit in July, as well as visits by a number of our senior ministers, including our Finance Minister, Commerce Minister, Home Minister, and the Human Resources Minister, as well as Deputy Chairman Planning Commission in the last 6 months. At the senior official and other levels, there have been over 55 exchanges of visits in the year so far. This working visit between PM and President Obama is intended to signal that the relationship has reached a stage of maturity. There has been positive progress recorded in a wide array of areas through existing mechanisms that cover over 33 separate dialogue structures. We expect that the summit-level meeting will reaffirm political commitment to the ongoing effort on both sides to intensify our strategic partnership. It is an opportunity to underline at a high political level the strategic vision that brings our countries closer together. We anticipate that the meeting will focus in particular on reviewing our bilateral cooperation, touching upon the following key pillars. 1, energy. This includes clean energy, our expanding partnership in hydrocarbons, as well as our effort to develop our partnership in peaceful uses of nuclear energy. Both sides will also review progress in implementation of the Civil Nuclear Initiative, that is a pillar of our strategic partnership. 2, security. Continuing to deepen our defense relationship which already includes joint military exercises and acquisition of military hardware. We will explore ways of expanding our defense ties beyond a buyer-seller relationship to a joint partnership in design, development, and production of defense material. We are also interested in intensifying cooperation between our Home Ministry and the US Department of Homeland Security to enhance capacity building, including in policing of large cities, partnerships in security technologies, combating counterfeit currency, and in securing ports, airports, and land border terminals. 3, trade and economic relations. This is a key pillar of the relationship with a combined total of 100 billion US dollars in goods and services trade. Both sides are working at a senior official level to address issues of concern on each side in areas ranging from manufacturing, trade, investment, innovation, as well as with regard to issues relating to non-immigrant visas for our highly skilled IT and ITES workers. 4th, strategic consultations. We now have wide-ranging consultations with the US on regional and global issues. This includes consultations on East Asia, Central Asia, and West Asia, as well as trilateral dialogues with Afghanistan and Japan. We look to consolidate and build upon such dialogues, including on the Indian Ocean region. Apart from this, the President and the Prime Minister will also discuss regional and global issues, including the situation in West Asia, South Asia, and also our expanding cooperation with the regional institutions in Southeast Asia. In closing, let me add that a visit such as this is focused not merely on deliverables, but also on establishing and reaffirming the strategic benefits that each side derives from this relationship. I will be happy to take your questions now.
What we will do is that, as you know, each one only one question. Then you can raise your hands and they will. Yeah, we will take first the trip and then any other questions. So we will first focus on the Washington part, if that's right. Yes, Manish? Just please wait till the mic comes so that everybody hears you clear.
Madam, are we going ahead with the nuclear pact between Westinghouse and NPCIL? And how does, if that pact goes through, how will it square with India's civil nuclear liability legislation? Thank you.
You know, discussions are ongoing between NPCIL and WEC, and it is our hope that these discussions will be closed successfully. The fact of the matter is that all contracts with foreign companies are subject to the Indian Civil Liability for Nuclear Damages Act and rules. The contracts have to be consistent with Indian law, and there is no question of Indian law being violated or diluted. As a government company, NPCIL will follow government stipulation that all contracts it concludes with foreign partners will be consistent with Indian law.
Madam, this is Prime Minister's almost last year in his 10 years tenure, and he's going to meet President Obama. There are 3 issues that he had been consistently pursuing: the nuclear cooperation, the FDI in retail, and the issue of climate change he has been telling many a times. Do you think that there will be any conclusive talk between President Obama and Prime Minister Manmohan Singh in this visit?
I think what we must realize is that all this is something that progresses with each meeting that takes place, with each summit that takes place, and all the meetings at official levels also that discuss these issues. You've raised 3 specific issues. Each of them have been progressed in various ways at various points of time. On the civil nuclear initiative, the government is committed to taking it forward. We feel that it is essential to expanding India's energy options and to contribute to our energy security. Nuclear power is an essential element of our overall energy basket, and we are determined to take it forward, the civil nuclear initiative, so that our country is able to benefit from the expansion of nuclear power. On the issue of climate change, we intend to enhance our dialogue with the US on issues relating to climate change. I can tell you that the working group that EM and Secretary Kerry agreed to establish in June this year will seek to find ways of working together in a practical manner to meet a shared overall objective of reducing the impact of climate on human activity while securing space for our developmental and economic objectives. On FDI in retail, well, it's part of the ongoing liberalization of the Indian economy, and that is an ongoing task, that's an ongoing objective, and these things take time, as we all know.
Ranjit, please. Ranjit.
Yeah, Madam, the American nuclear companies have raised certain queries. They have expressed doubts about Indian nuclear liability. Those companies agreeing to Indian law, India has decided to go ahead with the initial works agreement. Do you think the American companies will ultimately agree to the Indian law?
You see, I think I've already answered this question to some extent. Any company, whether it's a foreign company or whether it's a domestic company, they have to follow procedures that are consistent with Indian law. All contracts have to be consistent with Indian law. There is no question of Indian law being violated or diluted. That is the bottom line.
Good afternoon. The question is also about nuclear, but it's not about liability law. It's very symbolically that Manmohan Singh will go in September to New York and in October to Moscow. And either in New York Washington, or in Moscow, they will discuss the nuclear cooperation between our countries. So what is the difference between approach of Indian side in the activization of nuclear cooperation with old partner Russia and new partner USA? It's not about liability law, but in general. Thank you very much.
I think that you have to see that with whichever country we have cooperation in civil nuclear issues, we are basically trying to achieve the same objective. We are trying to build nuclear power plants that will contribute to our energy security and doing it in a manner that enhances our energy security.
Nainima.
Good evening, ma'am. Just want to understand, you said both leaders will discuss the concerns concerning the non-immigrant visa for highly skilled manpower. What are some of the concerns, if you can throw some light on that?
Well, I think the concerns are fairly well known, that Indian IT companies have a certain business model, and that the procedures that are presently being discussed in Congress would make it very difficult for this business model to be continued successfully. So what we are trying to do basically is to flag our concerns in the manner in which this is going to impact on our highly skilled non-immigrant workers. We're trying to flag the fact that some aspects of the proposed immigration reform would adversely impact visas for highly skilled non-immigrant workers.
Smita?
The meeting is expected between Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and Mr. Nawaz Sharif.
No, we are talking of the US, there are others.
No, it's in that context because the US has a Justice for Reward program on Hafiz Saeed. Is that an issue that India is willing to flag with the US again? He seems to be absolutely making statements every second day against India.
Could you repeat that question, please? Because
the US had announced a Justice for Rewards program on Hafiz Saeed, but there has really been no action, and Hafiz Saeed definitely seems to be one of the biggest bone of contention between India and Pakistan, Turks and relations. So is that an issue that India will be flagging with the US again in some way?
You know, you're talking about a US program for Hafiz Saeed. I don't see why I need to get into that at all. We have concerns relating to terrorism. We have concerns relating to terrorism which have been very explicitly stated by the Prime Minister, and we flag this to our strategic partners to tell them what our concerns are.
Just a minute, please, Michael.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Could you elaborate on the regional security component of the discussions, particularly Afghanistan? Key elements of those discussions will be, and whether India are of NATO troops discussed?
You're right. 2014 is a very significant year as far as Afghanistan is concerned. And when you're looking at the regional security situation, you're looking at a complexity of factors and different scenarios that might unfold. We continue to seek clarity on the upcoming security and political transitions with the partners with whom we are in contact in the run-up to 2014, which will see the drawdown of US and other ISAF troops.
Mr. Venkat Narayan.
Madam, when Mr. Obama came to India, he told the Indian Parliament that he would love to see India as a permanent member of the Security Council. Efforts have been going on for more than 20 years now, but things are not moving forward. Does the expansion of the Security Council, is it likely to figure in the Prime Minister's talks with Mr. Obama and other people he is going to meet? Thank you.
The expansion of the UN Security Council, the permanent membership, continues to remain an important priority for India. And the Prime Minister would be taking up this issue with key interlocutors, including at the UN General Assembly.
Dr. Awad.
Ma'am, I want to bring you back to the regional and global issues. You said there will be a discussion on Afghanistan in particular. There are certain issues where India have raised the concern of the talking to the Taliban and opening office in Doha, while also you have stressed on the proactive role for regional players. How do you see the mechanism working with India, Iran, and neighboring country of Afghanistan post 2014? Thank you.
The situation in Afghanistan is a fairly complex one. we believe in a process of dialogue in Afghanistan, which is Afghan-led, Afghan-owned, and Afghan-controlled. This has been our bottom line. In its process of transition, whether it's the political transition, whether it's the security transition, or whether it's the economic transition, we believe that the Afghan government needs to be supported in its efforts to achieve peace and reconciliation. And whoever the players are, as long as they are willing to work within the parameters of the Afghan constitution, need to be supported. India is doing its part in the reconstruction and economic development of Afghanistan. You are aware that we have a fairly sizable aid program that has managed to win hearts and goodwill in the Afghanistan, in all people in Afghanistan. And we intend to continue with that and give whatever support that it is within our capacity to give.
Mr. Ashok Sharma.
Madam, the Prime Minister will be meeting Obama a little ahead of the Bali WTO ministerial. The US is giving a huge subsidy to its farmers, which has distorted the world trade, and Doha round could not reach its conclusion. They have a huge subsidy under the US Farm Bill. Will the Prime Minister take up this issue with the Obama? Because Indian farmers are suffering on account of the huge subsidy given in US.
You know, I think that there are specific forums to take these issues forward. And at this point of time, it is not possible to go into great detail as to what the Prime Minister is going to take up or not take up. But our position is very clear. We have communicated the concerns that we have relating to agriculture and food security at the other fora that we have with the United States. So the US is well aware of what our position on this is. Whether it will figure in the meeting between the Prime Minister and President Obama, I can't foresee at this point of time.
That about the policing in the large cities. Will you explain about the Home Ministry policing in the large cities? Will you explain something?
Well, you see, whenever we talk with strategic partners on various issues of mutual interest, we like to share best practices. We like to explain a little bit about what each of us is doing and whether there is something that we can learn from each other in this process. So at a very general level, I guess that is what we'll be looking at.
Madam Secretary, hearing from what you mentioned, I understand there will be a discussion on cooperation on border security. And will that touch upon security, border issues of northern part of India, including Ladakh?
You know, when you're talking about border security, we are talking about our checkposts on the border. We're talking about the integrated customs checkposts. We're talking about mechanisms at the border to facilitate people crossing across the border and improve services there. And this is one of the subgroups for cooperation in the Homeland Security Dialogue.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the aspects that you mentioned.
मैम गुड इवनिंग। यूएस में मैम प्रधानमंत्री जी जब अपना नवाज शरीफ से मुलाकात करेंगे तो किन मुद्दों पर चर्चा होगी?
नहीं, अभी हम पहले वॉशिंगटन में हैं, उसके बाद न्यूयॉर्क जब जाएंगे बिल्कुल, तो थोड़ी देर ठहर जाइए आप। वॉशिंगटन में और किसी को सवाल हैं? Anyone else? Yes, sure. Frank. Just hold.
Hello? Is dying.
Take that.
Okay, that's better. Good evening, madam. There's been a number of issues you've covered. There's one other issue that I've seen quite widely reported about refrigeration gases. There's been there's a move to sign an agreement so that India will phase out the use of certain refrigeration gases, which have impacts on the climate. I know there's been some pushback from some, at least interest groups in India, saying that this will tie India into buying patented gases from DuPont and other US companies. I'm interested to know what the state of play is there.
I presume you're talking about HFCs, right? Now, we're discussing the issue of HFCs with the United States. And while discussing it, we will not only be looking at the international understandings on HFCs that we have in the context of the UNFCCC, Rio +20, and G20, but also we will discuss this bilaterally with the US in order to develop a better mutual understanding of each other's positions. You may be aware that bilateral India-US task force on HFCs was established in 2011. And we think it would be useful to convene a meeting of this task force to discuss all relevant issues related to HFCs in the bilateral context.
It sounds like it's a work in process and not something we're going to see signed during the bilateral. Would that be a correct reading of what you just said?
Yeah, it's a work in progress. We have to see what happens.
Yes. 1 minute है जी.
Madam, besides the IT professionals visa and this skilled or non-skilled workers visa, will they discuss about the student visa also? Nowadays there is a big problem for students also to get US visa easily.
You know, there are fora. Like I said, there are 33 structured dialogues between India and the United States. So many of these issues, which can be very technical in nature, would be discussed at one of these groups. We have a consular dialogue, and we take up these issues at the consular dialogue, probably not at the Prime Minister's level.
I think we've exhausted the Washington part. And Nidhi is not around, otherwise she wanted to ask. But you want to ask Washington? Yes,
Hello,
Sanjana.
Will the talks also revolve around cybersecurity issues, like after the NSA's snooping, the PRISM and all the concerns across the world we have? So will that also be part of the discussions in Washington?
Like I said, there are several dialogues that are ongoing between India and the US. And if you waited for a summit to raise every single issue on which you want to have discussions, then you'd be waiting for a very long time. So it's already being discussed at the appropriate fora.
Yes, somebody wanted the New York part. Yes.
Ma'am, will PM meet to Mr. Nawaz Sharif? And if they meet, what will be talked about Dawood Ibrahim and etc., etc.?
You know, the Prime Minister's program is still in the process of being firmed up. So I can't really confirm to you whether he will meet Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif or not.
What he will talk about.
Yeah, what he will talk about, right. That's right. He has to meet him first. So let's see.
Yeah. No, please.
देखिए बात ये है कि जैसे प्रधानमंत्री कहे थे, there are certain harsh realities on the ground, right? And the harsh reality on the ground is that we continue to face acts of terror by groups operating from Pakistan and from territories under Pakistan's control. There are also many persons indulging in hostile propaganda against India who continue to roam around freely in Pakistan. And despite repeated commitments from the highest levels in Pakistan and very positive statements, like you've said, we see very little actual progress in the efforts to bring those responsible for the Mumbai terror attacks to justice. So these are certain harsh realities that we have to deal with. So let's see what happens.
Ms. Charu.
Madam Foreign Secretary, I just wanted to cross-check. You mentioned that the Prime Minister's program in New York is still under progress, it's still not finalized. But apart from the possible meet with Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, any of the other, you mentioned that he would be engaging in other bilateral meets on the sidelines of the UNGA. Could you throw some light on that? Who are some of the other leaders he might be meeting?
There are certain bilateral meetings that are in the process of being firmed up. But since his entire program is still in the process of being firmed up, I can't confirm to you which are the specific meetings. All right?
Yes, Gautam.
Ma'am, good afternoon. I know that you will not be confirming the bilateral meeting, but Bangladesh Foreign Minister has announced yesterday on 28th September, there will be a bilateral meeting at the sidelines of UNGA. I am not asking about the details of what would be Prime Minister will say, but I have another question that Prime Minister probably will inaugurate a 400 kV power transmission line which, by which India will be supplying power to Bangladesh. It will be a big event for both the countries, and Prime Minister would be inaugurating perhaps. Whether we have invited anybody from Bangladesh or Prime Minister would be talking to Bangladesh PM on this issue?
First, let me agree with you. It is a very big event. We see this as a milestone in our cooperation with Bangladesh. And there are certain discussions on as to how to commemorate this. So I don't want to go into details right now. They're still being worked out. And yes, we hope that there will be a meeting between the Prime Minister and Bangladeshi Prime Minister in New York.
Yes, Srinjoy.
Ma'am, the Secretary R's office has written to the MEA and many other places about reports of intrusions, Ladakh-type intrusions into Bhutan in 3 places. Can you tell us? Huh? Achha, you want me to ask something on New York? I can, provided I can ask this question as well.
Ma'am, you met the Afghan Deputy Foreign Minister earlier this week in Delhi, and we were told cryptically that events related to Afghanistan would be discussed on the margins of the UNGA. So could you elaborate on what these events concerning Afghanistan would be?
Well, you know that the relationship between India and Afghanistan is a very close one. Our ties go back centuries. We have close historical, civilizational ties. And India is one of the closest friends that Afghanistan has. So these meetings are part of an ongoing process where we touch base from time to time to discuss progress on the various projects that we have going between us and to exchange views on what further needs to be done. So that has to be seen in that context.
Yes.
So this is the bilateral Bangladesh. Ma'am, since you have already said that, and Dipumoni yesterday has said that there will be bilaterals between the Prime Minister of India and hers, and you just said that. Since, if you can elaborate that, what kind of talks may materialize and what are the agendas between Bangladesh and India, since Tista agreement has not been made possible, land boundary agreement is also not made possible. Anything else which can come up in this discussion?
You know, we have such close relations with Bangladesh that our ties span an entire gamut of issues. And despite the fact that neither the Tista waters nor the land boundary agreement has gone through, you must know that we remain deeply committed to delivering on these agreements. So there'll be plenty to talk about, whether it's our cooperation on the economic side, lines of credit, supply of power, any number of issues, in keeping with the very close nature of relations between our two countries.
Ma'am, I just wanted to know whether you could shed some light on, again, on Prime Minister's visit to Washington, whether the issue of Indian purchases of Iranian crude would come up, and specifically what level of Indian purchases would be compliant with US sanctions on Iran. Thank you.
It's very difficult to say what's going to come up and what's not going to come up. I mean, they're meeting for a limited period of time, and if we're going to discuss every single issue that all of you have asked me, that whether they'll come up or not, I think that on this entire question of purchases of Iranian crude, that is something that we do with Iran. So I'm not sure that we would want to raise it from our side. If the United States want to raise it, it's welcome to.
Thank you. I'm very grateful. Ma'am, Secretary R's office has written a note to large parts of the government, military, even your Joint Secretary North, about Ladakh-type intrusions in 3 places in Bhutan. Since Bhutan is a very friendly country and we also have Indian soldiers there, is there anything the Indian government is doing about it? Because there's not been one report, but several reports.
You know, Shrinjoy, I'm coming back to headquarters after 6 years overseas, and I'm really surprised to be faced with a question about what Secretary R may or may not have written to. No, I don't want to see the copy, because even if you showed me the copy, I would not comment on internal communications between ministries or organizations in Government of India. You should not be having that copy, as a matter of fact, especially if it's classified.
Can I ask another? No?
Nope.
You used up your chance. Anyone else since? No.
Ma'am, recently there were news items that Iranian oil minister has asked Indian ambassador that they won't be accepting entire payments in rupees, and also on the fact that they are not willing for production sharing contracts. And then there was this tanker issue also. So are we
not willing for what contracts?
They are not willing to sign the production sharing contracts with the Indian companies.
Production sharing contracts.
As was earlier reported. And also on their stand on not selling cheap gas to India. And then we also had this tanker issue with Iran. So are we seeing a hardening stance from Iran And what is happening on the import side? Are we planning to maintain it the last year's level or cut them? Thank you.
You know, we have a long-standing energy partnership with Iran, which we greatly value. And it has proved to be very reliable as well. So, in recent months, we have evolved a system of payment for crude oil imported from Iran that envisages payment of some parts of these imports in Indian rupees. That is the factual position as of date.
Rupees just to save the foreign exchange.
Sorry?
India had started paying the entire amount in rupees to save on the foreign exchange, and the oil minister had also written to the prime minister saying that it will help in saving foreign exchange, and they're in dialogue.
Look, as of now, the situation is that we pay part of it in rupees, and the rest has to be decided on as to how it is to be paid, because there are difficulties relating to the payment. So let's leave it at that.
Thank you very much. With that, we come to the end of this interaction. Thank you.